Hello and welcome to another episode of A Slice of Health, the Candid Health Chat podcast, where we slice away health truth from health fiction. Join me and my friends as we challenge common health myths via chit chat, powered by several cups of coffee. Don't forget to subscribe and follow us on social media, and do visit us at asliceofhealth.club. Let's get to today's episode. Hello, health champions. Welcome back to another episode. Today we have Yejide Kilanko with us, and we are going to be talking about childhood mental health. She is a licensed mental health worker who works with children, doing psychotherapy and all other kinds of therapy as well. And also she is the author of one of my favorite books, which is Daughters Who Walk This Path. And I know that I've been chatting to some of you, in the coming weeks about the fact that I was going to be doing this interview, and so many of you were excited because you've listened, you've read her books, and especially Daughters. So it'll be really nice to have her on. So thank you so much coming on, Yejide. I'm so happy to have you on.
Thank you so much, Damia. This is so much fun. Thank you.
Oh, that's great. So tell us a lot about yourself.
Oh, a lot. Okay.
Yes,
so
yes.
Okay, so I was born in Ibadan, Nigeria. So that's in southwestern Nigeria. So I grew up in a home with 5 kids. I'm the oldest of 5. My dad was a university professor in vet medicine. So we grew up in the University of Ibadan. And I went to boarding school. I remember when I was 10. I went to boarding school when I was 10. I went to one of the federal schools in Onitsha. I remember reading a book. It was called about Mr. Bako and his family. They would travel around Nigeria, exploring different things. So I even at that age, I wanted to see things. So I told my dad about the story, and then I said I wanted to go to the federal school in Onitsha because I wanted to see the bridge. I wanted to see the River Niger, and I wanted to see the bridge. And honestly, after boarding school, the first year was hard. It was very, very hard. I was far away from home, and so, but I that particular experience kind of shaped me into the woman rather I am today. I think in terms of independence, in terms of learning to take care of myself, making friends from different tribes, being open to different experiences. And then, so let me see, fast forward, I went to University of Ibadan and I studied political science. My dream then was to become a lawyer. So that was the dream. And in 2000, I moved to Laurel, Maryland in the US because my husband was living there. He came home, we got married, and I joined him in the States. And we lived there for about 4 years. I had my first 2 kids there. And then we moved to Canada and I had my third. So I have 3 kids. The oldest is 19. The youngest is 14. And along the way, I was like, okay, I was still thinking about law, but I was like, I don't know. So because my second child has special needs, and that was when I got to meet a social worker for the first time. Because living in Nigeria, I think the only idea I have of a social worker was just of child protection, that they would come into the house and take your children away. And that was all I thought I knew about social work. And then I met this wonderful, wonderful human being who was a hospital social worker, and she was a blessing to us. And so that was what led me to social work. And I decided, okay, once we settled in Canada, I said, I'm going to go, back to school. So I went back to school and got a bachelor's and a master's in social work. And in 2009, which is actually when I started writing Daughters, I started my first job as a child protection worker. So I became that social worker, the ones who come to the house and take the kids. And then I realized it was way more than that, it was more about providing safety for children, right? And supporting families, because we all have times that we go through really difficult things and we need extra support. And so for me, it was more about making children were safe, supporting families, helping them find their own strengths. It's not about coming in and prescribing, things for them, but helping them, we all go through difficult times. How can we help? And so that's what led to me writing Daughters. So I started writing poetry when I was about 12, but it was very personal. What would I say was an angst-filled teenage years. I feel things very deeply. So you can imagine, in Nigeria, there are a lot of things to feel. And and so I know I would write poetry, and when I got to University of Ibadan, I would write. I joined the press for my department, and I joined the press for my hall. So would write. I remember then we had this bulletin board. We write stuff and pin it up for the week, and people would come and read and stand in front of us and read. So that was my first attempt at writing and publishing, and then but I never thought I could write a novel because I'm like, oh my God, like that's a lot of words and a lot of like, it's a lot to do. And so in 2009, when I started working as a social worker in child protection, I was exposed to, cases where there was child sexual abuse, and it was hard. It was hard having to do the interviews, talking to the children, trying to figure out supports, trying to figure out what to do. And it was a lot for me, and I carried it home. And so that led to me writing a poem. So the poem was titled Silence Speaks. And it was about, in fact, that poem became a scene in the book. It became a crucial scene in the book. And when I wrote the poem, I shared it on Facebook. And the feedback, I got some private messages about people actually making disclosures about being sexually abused. And these were people I grew up with, people I knew. And I was like, you were? Like, like I had no idea. And so when that happened, I'm thinking, oh, okay, maybe I could turn this into a story. And so from that poem, I started writing and writing and writing. And by December 2009, I had about 40,000 words. And then I'm like, okay, what am I going to do with this? Because it was a mess, I would say, because even till now, I still haven't taken a writing course. That was my first, like, I didn't know exactly what I was doing, but I knew that I had to write this story. And so I gave it a couple of people to read for me, and they read and were like, oh, I think you have something here. And then I said, okay, you know what, go do something more with it. So I went back. So a year later, so June 2010, I had a manuscript of about 60,000 words. So I'm like, okay, what am I going to do with this book now? So I went to Nigeria, I think July 2010 to visit. And while I was there, I was talking to a friend of mine, a childhood friend of mine, who went to University of Ibadan together. And she told me about another lady who went to school with. I'm sure you might probably know. Her name is Adobe Nwabani. She wrote I Do Not Come to You by Chance. So so my friends, if I said, oh, do you know Adobe wrote a book? I'm like, she did? She's like, yes. When you get back, go find the book. I was like, oh, wow. So because Adobe and I were in the same same faculty. She did psychology and I did political science. And so when I came back to Canada, I found her book, and then I found an interview that she did about how she got an agent from Nigeria and how she was able to publish. So I'm like, well, if Adobe could do it, then I can try. And so that was what led to me actually. So I said, okay, I'm going to figure out how to write a query letter. I'm going to make a list of literary agents, and I'm going to send them like a query. And that was what led to me getting an agent. So, and then my agent, fantastic, worked with me. We polished up the book and submitted it, and then it got published. So that was how everything began. Yeah, so I think it began with, I would say, taking a leap of faith. Because like you put yourself out there, you do the work, and then you see what comes back. But and so yeah, so everything just, it was really like a miracle story that I was able to get an agent within a week. I got a publishing deal within a week. My journey has definitely not been the same since then. There've been lots and lots of no's, lots and lots of rejections. But I think I've found this is my thing. Writing is my thing. That's my gift. It adds purpose to my life. So no matter what I get, the no's, the yeses, the maybes, the hard times, I know it's something I'll always do. So I don't know what else so tell me all about it. Well, I don't know what else to add to that, but yeah, so that's pretty much me.
That
I
I
guess.
love that, and I do not come to you by chance. It's another one of the books in my library, and I love how you talked about, someone saying, oh, there's someone that we know that we've gone to school with, and I think the thing about representation and just being able to see someone that looks like you or someone that you can identify with in a position that you want to occupy is also so important to encouraging us to pursue our dreams.
Yeah.
And what you said about sharing what you'd written on Facebook and how people resonated with that is so true, and it's so true for the book, because reading it, I personally felt, yeah, I get this. Like, their journeys, I get this. And even in my friendship group as well, people that I didn't think got it would be like, oh yeah, it's not far-fetched. Like, they'd gone through it as well, or their cousin had gone through it as well. And it opened up an opportunity for us to discuss things that had happened. Things that some people have not been able to tell their mothers because they did not believe that mom was going to believe them, because it was being done by somebody in a position of authority, or somebody that was well respected within the family.
Yes.
Or things that are still affecting them even in their intimate relationships with their current partners that happened 10, 20 years ago when they were much younger. So thank you so much for doing that work. This is my copy right here, and yeah, I really do love this book. And listeners, stay tuned till the end, because I'm going to do a giveaway of some brand new copies of Daughters, because I think every woman should actually read this. So thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you for reading. Thank you for reading.
I really,
I'm always honored when I meet someone and say, oh, I've read your book, because the way I look at it is, one, you gave your time and you gave your money. So you're giving your resources to me. So to me, that's a blessing. So thank you.
no, thank you for doing the work of writing it. So I want to now jump into talking about the main subject of today, which is mental health in children. And it's something that I think we've started talking a bit more about now,
Yes.
but we still don't talk about it as much. And I think there's still quite a bit of stigma surrounding the subject as well. So if we go into sort of potentially, perhaps maybe non-verbal cues that children might be struggling with their mental health. And then perhaps then going into ways of seeking out support, or also ways of being supportive when we then know and we identify that something is going on.
Okay. So in terms of nonverbal cues, I always look at functioning, like how a child functions. So we all have a normal, like, what your mood, like some people are born happy. They're always happy all the time. Some people are more melancholic. It doesn't mean they're sad. That's just how they are. And so if you see a child, okay, so a child who's always happy all the time is suddenly sad. Right, you're seeing more, sadness. A child who's quite open, they leave their bedroom doors open, they talk, and all of a sudden they're kind of withdrawn, they're closing their doors. It could be the ages and stages too. So maybe they're becoming teens now and more aware of themselves. But it's noticing things like that, right? They're suddenly very guarded around a particular person. They don't want to go to a particular place. Maybe they're sleeping too much, right? Kids, yes, some kids love to sleep, but okay, now this child is sleeping like almost the whole day, or this child is eating a lot, or this child is not eating at all, right? So it's paying attention to, okay, there's something off. So it's, like, okay, I've noticed this. What's going on? And sometimes it could just be they're going through hormonal changes. It could be something else but it's important to pay attention to, oh, this child is suddenly acting a particular way that is not the norm for them. So it's exploring with them what exactly is going on with you. And sometimes is, okay, so they're very social. Normally their friends will come to the house. All of a sudden, nobody's coming. They're not hanging out with their friends. They're not, or they're suddenly being very secretive about everything. So it's good to have those conversations, no matter what the age of the child is. It's like, okay, like, and understanding, okay, as they're getting older, like I have a 19-year-old, so how I would, now that she's in university, of course, there's some things that, she wouldn't tell me because that's just the normal stages, right? So it's understanding, okay, but I think the earlier you pay attention to your child, if you're involved in your child's life, not you would notice things. Not like you guys are just living in the house. You're not roommates. You have a relationship. You're spending time with them. You're sitting on the couch and you're calling them about watching movies. You've been doing that since they were little. So yeah, so ever since you were little, your child. You've been growing with them, right? So then you it's easier for you at that point to notice things. But if you don't spend time with the child, you're not going to notice the nonverbal cues because you don't know this child. So I think that's really important, that you have to know your children. You have to spend time with them. You have to spend time studying them. You have to know what they like and what they don't like. And so that when they're telling you things, when they're crying for help, and the cry for help is not a verbal like, oh mom, I need help, or dad, I need help. You can hear it. Right. So I think with anything in life is building relationships, because that's what's going to build trust. Right. So if they feel that they have a relationship with you, then they can come and tell you things. And they know you're not going to like scream and like, they know. But if you don't have that relationship with them, and then it's very hard for them to trust you or to feel that you can help them. So I think so paying attention. You have to pay attention to what's going on around, and and then make sure you spend time with them so you can see when things are not going well.
Yeah, and I think you literally just open sort of a time bomb in terms of spending time and the quality of the time as well spent with children. Because I suppose now in the midst of coronavirus, we've all had to slow down a little bit more.
Yes.
But previously, because everyone was always sort of in the rat race, and you go to work, and the time that you probably have with the children is maybe perhaps dinner time, and they've already done their homework, and then they go to bed or stay on their devices in their bedroom, and then you see them again on your way out. A lot of people don't have as much sort of intense quality time to actually know the character of their children and notice little inflections in their voice, or notice when they're not eating a certain thing anymore, or not willing to go to so-and-so's house anymore. And those things are really important, as you said. And what about articulation of issues? So even as adults, we have difficulty putting words to our emotions and putting words to the difficulties that we're having. How about children, and what does that look like in children in terms of them articulating what is going on?
Yeah, so it's also talking about emotions from when they were little too, right? So you have all those basic emotions. I'm mad, I'm sad, I'm glad, I'm happy, so helping them, okay, what's going on? Like expanding their literacy around it. Like, okay, what is excited? What is frustrated? Like, because it has different connotations to them, right? So it's helping them like, okay, and especially for me, my second child has special needs. And so it's been a different, and communication is part of his challenges, right? So I've had to find different ways, and he was nonverbal for a while, so he couldn't even speak to me. So we had to do pictures, doing little things to be able to, okay, tell me what's going on. And so it's helping them. And kids learn honestly more by watching you. So you have to express how you're feeling. Like, because okay, mommy is feeling this way because I'm angry, because I'm sad, because I'm happy, because I'm excited, because, so that they can see when you give them the language, you give them the words, then they have it, right? And so it's, and for me, I also do a lot of books. We, like there are different books, and even books on emotions, the movies, like, so it's having that conversation. I remember, and so I sit and I talk to them, and we read books together, we watch movies together, and it's explaining things. I remember my youngest when he was 4, and I think he was a runner. He was one of those kids that just like to take off, and so we had to put like I think like what's like a chain on the door, because if he can open the door and just take. So I had to so I would say, okay, So I told him, I said, you can leave the house because, and he said, why? And I said, because I said so. And he's like, but why did you say so? So I'm like, okay. So I had to explain, okay, wow, I said so because one, if you open the door and you run outside, a car can be coming down the road and the driver would not see you and they're going to hit you. And then you have to go to the hospital. Like, oh, okay. That makes sense. So it's giving them like, okay, explaining things properly. When it comes to, in terms of, even we're talking about going back to daughters talking about sexual abuse, you have to name body part properly. This is what it is.
Yeah.
There's nothing shameful about this, the name for a body part. That is your body. You have it. That's, and this is what it does. Right. So, and so I stay having conversations early with them about, good touch, bad touch, your private areas, areas you can show other people. I remember I got a book from the library, talked about drugs, and this is the different names of drugs. This is what will happen to you if you take drugs. These are the side effects. Like I'm very honest and open. We have like open conversations. And I remember my daughter's like, you don't act like a Nigerian mother. Like, but for me, I'm like, but I'm the way I look at it, I'm raising children. I'm not raising my children in Nigeria. I'm raising them in Canada. So this is their world. They need the language to function in their world. And it is my job as their parent to prepare them for that world as much as within my own, and when I'm not able to find people who can provide them with that support. So it's how you started, and it's not, and even if your children are older, and you didn't start it, when they were younger, it's never too late. It's never too late to have a conversation, sit down and say, you know what, hey, you know what, I know I should have done this prior. I didn't. We mess up. And when I mess up, I admit and I say, hey, I messed up. I'm sorry. That's it. So I say sorry to my children. I said, I'm sorry. I messed up. I overreacted, which I tend to do because I'm a paranoid Nigerian mother. and I think because of what I do, I know the dangers out there. And so that makes me even more like, I know when they were younger, they were like, oh, want to go for a sleepover? I'm like, nope, no sleepovers. You can stay at their house till midnight, but I'm bringing you back home. I'm like, so they're never gonna sleep over because because I'm like, nope, unless it's family. Yeah, but I'm just, so some things, but I had to sit and explain to them, like, I know I'm cramping your style. I know like the other kids are laughing or whatever, but I said, this is why. So I think children do better when they know why you're making a decision. That is not just because you're evil and you were born to make their lives miserable. It's because, yes, okay, am I being a bit overprotective? But let's have a conversation about it. Right. So I think it's creating that space for conversations. Like, okay, like let's have a conversation about it. And there might sometimes that you'll be like, okay, I've heard your side, I understand, but I still have to make this decision. So this is going to be my, and they're not going to be happy with you. But I'm like, well, you know what? You get over it. So
I love that. And I really love what you said about giving them the language, because when you give them the language, they will have it. And I think that is so important because, a lot of people growing up, perhaps their parents don't sit down with them to explain things the way that you've described, explain the fears that the parent has about a certain situation. And that also doesn't give the children the opportunity to explain the fears that they have as a child about a certain situation. And so that lack of communication then perpetuates itself and turns into sometimes an adult, a young adult or mature adult who still cannot articulate how they're feeling because they've never been given that opportunity and that safe space to do so. And that comes with education and it comes with awareness. And I think the more we talk about these things, the more we then start to learn that we need to create these spaces. But going back into talking about young children and, how their mental health journeys, the journeys that their mental health can take. Let's say we then had a parent who has noticed these things. So, has noticed these non-verbal cues that the child has given, or just knows that there's something wrong, and perhaps the child is not being able to articulate it, or the parent is not able to withdraw the information, but they're afraid. Afraid, one, of, like you said, social workers taking the child away, maybe feeling that they're being bad parents, that why would my child have anxiety? Why would my child have depression? Why would my child have been abused? What would you say to that parent in terms of demystifying the stigma and encouraging them to actually seek out help?
The way I look at it is that we're all wired different. Our brains are wired different, and so we all the things that people are some people can handle things. So something happens. So a major event happens. If you have 10 people, they're going to react it in probably 10 different ways, right? And so some people are prone. I personally have anxiety. So I get really, and it's more generalized. So I'm the kind of person like, oh, the sky is going to fall. And, like, I'm always like, oh, something's going to happen. So I get it. So it's easy for me to talk to a child and say, okay, there's something, what's going on? So I think one thing I want to tell parents is early intervention is really important. So the earlier you're able to get help for your child, the better the outcome, right? So if okay, you don't have most, I can only speak for, where I live in terms of Ontario, most communities have children's mental health agencies. So you can call and say, okay, I would like to do an intake. And then they can talk to you and say, what's going on, right? So I don't want people, there's no shame in getting help. There shouldn't be any blame. If you look at it, like, as long as you come with, the main goal is your child and your child's well-being. I would like to think that most social workers are not judgmental in terms of, oh, we're trying to find a way to blame you for the situation. No, the focus is making sure that your child is functioning properly and getting the help that they need. And yeah, so so please, people, and there's some conditions that if it's genetic condition, that's how the child was born, so they can't help that, right? So they can help their situation. So and most of the things run in families. Anxiety runs in family, depressions run in family, right? And so maybe, yes, I know for some parents, especially if they're from like maybe Africa, or like different what's the word I'll use now, communities where mental health carries a lot of stigma. They may not have those those words themselves, and if they're dealing with it and they haven't addressed their own issues, then they can't help their child, right? But it's really important that you seek help as early as you can, right? And just going with an open mind and with the goal that the main thing you need is help for your child, right? So there is no blame. There's no blaming, and shaming doesn't do anything. It just makes the matter worse.
Yeah, that is so important. And going through that and sort of talking about, children who are then struggling with potentially things like self-harm and self-harming behaviors, what kind of advice would you give to even parents as well to manage that? Because that can be quite stressful and strenuous on the child going through that, but then also on the family and also perhaps other children in that environment. What kind of advice would you give to parents dealing with that kind of situation?
So I always say that, children live in families, whether, it's, they're direct parents, whether caregivers, whether grandparents. So if they look at it like everybody needs, so they're going to look at it as a support for everybody, right? So as I would tell the parents, as you're getting mental health support for your child, get support for yourself, because you're going to need someone to process that with. And if you're not able to get like mental health support, because I know sometimes accident-free services can be challenging. It could be somebody you trust, if you're a church person or a person of faith, whatever your faith background is, whether it could be a good friend who is able to be objective and listen without judgment. And yeah, because sometimes you don't want someone to solve your problem. You just want them to listen, right? So it's important that they see, and I say when your child also sees that you're taking care of yourself, then they're more open to accepting help. So when they know that, okay, you know what, when you make going for counseling, you normalize it. It's normal to go for counseling. It's normal, to do this, for self-care. It's normal for us to take walks. It's normal for us to do things, let's bake together. And it doesn't have to be anything complicated. Let's bake together. Let's go for a walk together. Let's even dance together. Let's put on some music and dance. Right. So it's, so it's figuring out what works for our family unit. Like, so we all need to be strong together. So what is going to feed us? So if we're looking at, so it's not about, oh, we have this child with mental health issues and therefore it's the child's problem. No, it's more like every part of the family. So we're all a team and all of us have things that we need to grow. So this is you, this is what you need to grow. This is what I need to grow. So how can we all strengthen each other? So if you help them look at it that way, so it's not about stigmatizing whoever has the mental health challenge, but looking at it, this is our family issue. And how can we support each other through it? And it's really important. Parenting is hard. It is very, very hard. And so, yeah, so I salute anyone who gets up in the morning. You're like, okay, so and realizing that, okay, so yesterday, hey, you messed up. Good. Today, it's a new day. Let's, and it's hard, especially if you have a child who's dealing with, suicide ideation, who's having self-harm, because then you have to do the safety part. You have to make sure, like depending on what they're using, yeah, with shops in the house, if you have a gun, whatever, you have to really, with medication, you have to do that safety planning, and it's exhausting. And so that's why it's important. You have to be kind to yourself. Yeah, kindness, self-kindness is really important. You are doing the best you can within your, what's going on. So you have to be kind to yourself because it will drain you. I would not, like a lot of parents, because it's like you're constantly worrying, constantly like, okay, I can't, what's going on? What's this child doing? What's happening next? And if they have serious mental illness, it's a lifelong thing. So it's not like, oh, they're going to grow out of it, right? They're not. So you're going to have to keep, and your involvement would, depend on the child's functioning. For some, as they, get into adulthood, then you don't have to be around, like being that 24/7 person. For some people, they may not be able to leave the house. All right. So it's your support system. You need a support system. You need people who can, sometimes maybe they bring you a meal because you don't have any energy to cook. Right. It's somebody helping, your friend going for a walk with you. Or so you need to have a support system. And I think once you realize that you're able to first do there's a grief that comes with it. Right. When you have a child, it's really, whatever it is that you have a picture in your head when you're pregnant. My child is going to be this way when they're born. And then it doesn't turn out to be that way. So first you have to grieve it. Grieve what your expectations are. So once you grieve that, like, okay, but this is what I am right now. This is where I am right now. So what do I need? Look around. What is it that you need? So you first have to know what you need, because you cannot take care of a child if you're not okay. So you have to be okay first to be able to take care of that child. And so once up around said, oh, well, but I say, yes, that is an act of love. Your self-care is an act of love for your family. Because if you're not well, you cannot do anything well. Right. So you have to think of like, okay, if I'm taking care of myself, I'm, going for a walk with my friends, I'm going for a movie night, I'm doing yoga, whatever it is, whatever fills you up. It's an act of love for yourself and love for your family. So, and I think that's one of the things that is important. I would speak for the women I grew up with, that you always have to be strong all the time. You have to carry the world on your shoulders. We're not teaching, there's nothing wrong with being vulnerable and showing it, right? There's nothing wrong with being like, what, I'm tired. I need a break, right? And I can't do this. There's nothing wrong with those words. I need help. Right? I just want to go sleep. Like I just need to just curl up under my, and just sleep, because that's what I need right now. Because you're going to need to fuel yourself because so you can parent well, so you can see those nonverbal cues. Because if you're tired, you can't see it. If your lens is already, distorted by your own issues, you can't help your child. So the first you do your own work, then you are able to help your child. Then you are able to do the long-term work of, working with a child who's dealing with serious mental illness, or working, because it's draining. It truly is. There are no other words to describe it. But at the bottom of it is love, right? You love that child and you want to give them the best. So seek support and seek help when you need it.
I really love what you said, and you're talking about if you're not well, then you can't really parent well, and the whole thing about talking about sort of the women that you grew up with, and that's definitely my case as well, in terms of a lot of people feeling that I have to be the person that is in charge all the time, and I often say to people that children can pick up on your energy and the inflections in you, and children know that you're anxious and that you're parenting from a place of anxiety. And it's something that I often talk about, even with Nigerian parenting, that a lot of times it's sort of like there's a saying, I am Ija, and it's that kind of thing where my heart has jumped out of my chest, and this is how I'm parenting, and you're parenting from a place of being very fluttered, and the children pick up on those anxieties and internalize that as well, and then manifest their own anxieties in different ways. Because first, you've not addressed your own underlying anxiety, and you've not given the anxiety a voice. You've not articulated what exactly is going on that's causing those behavioral patterns. And so children can often then follow that kind of pattern, because they do often as they see, as opposed to as you say. And going into talking about, you said that we should normalize saying you're going to counseling in the home, and people often feel that, oh, if mom says that she's going to counseling, or dad, or whoever is the sort of authority figure in the home, that perhaps children might worry, become anxious a bit more, that the parent is unwell or is seeking help. What would you say to that in terms of managing that kind of situation?
Well, I think that the kids are living at the house with you. They already know there's something going on with you. Like if they see mom crying all the time, or her mom who's not able to get out of bed, or dad's not, so they know that you're not functioning well. So if you're coming and say, what, I know I've been sad, a lot lately, or I've not been doing things with, it's, I need help, and that's why I'm seeking help. Right? So it's how you frame things. Right? It's so now, I haven't been doing this, but I want to be able to do it. And that's part of why I'm seeing a counselor, because they're going to help me figure things out. Or this is why, I'm going to see a doctor. This is why I'm taking my medication. Right? So this is why I'm taking this medication, because I want to be able to, to do things better, to do things with you. Right? So I'm not saying go into details, right? In terms of, so there's still adult information that needs to be kept to adults. Your child is not your therapist. Your child is not your friend in terms of, oh, let me onboarding all my soul to you. You need to preserve their innocence as much as possible. Right? So it's more like they watch, especially children who grew up in a home where there's a lot of anxiety. They are very hyper vigilant. They pay attention to everything. They're good eavesdroppers. They're like, what are they saying? What's going on? Who's doing what? Because they know. Because for them, it's protection. That the more information I have, then I know how to react, how to protect myself. So I need to know what dad and mom are talking about. I need to know who's doing what, where they're going, because it gives my world a sense of safety. So they already know there's something off anyway. So in terms of like, what, I haven't been myself, but I'm getting help. So not framing it as something like it's a bad thing. Mm-hmm. So that's part of the normalization. Like, I'm getting help. And the goal of getting the help is so I can get better. Right? So they're like, okay, mom's trying to get better. That's a good thing. Right? So yeah, so it's, so for them, it wouldn't be, if somebody, like, they go to school and they hear somebody's doing counseling, they're going to think, oh, this person is crazy. That's not going to be their first thought. They thought, oh, okay, this person's getting help, right? And so if they're telling their friends, oh, person's getting help, not like, oh, the person is not well. And so it's how you frame things for children. And so once you help them frame it in the proper way, then they're like, okay, so then that shapes how they interact with things like that in the future, when it comes to their friends or in the future, even for themselves, when they have to seek help, then it's not something that they should be ashamed of.
Yeah, definitely. I love that. And I really love what you said about your child is not your therapist. Because I think in a lot of settings as well, when parents don't have their own safe outlets outside of the home, the child then becomes the receptacle of the issues that mom and dad or mom and mom, whoever, is experiencing. And so the parents are having conflict within their own relationship, but then the child then becomes the one that receives or your dad did this, or your mom did this, or, and obviously children don't know how to process that. And, I was having a conversation yesterday, and we were talking about how some children then have their relationships with their parents affected because they're looking at the parent and seeing you as mom or dad, but then also then seeing you through the eyes of, oh, but mom said that you did this, and mom said that you did this. And so the child's view of their parent is altered, not by anything the parent has done in their parenting, but what the other parent has said to them. And that also causes, I think, some internal conflict for children. For children as well. And then going forward in terms of therapy, because therapy has evolved over time, and especially with children, I think there's so much available in terms of the kinds of therapy that is offered to help children express themselves and to explore what they're going through. What can you tell us about sort of the wide scope of what therapy is?
So some of the modalities, like in terms of treatment modalities, so we can have play therapy, you can have talk therapy, which is sometimes like more focused on talking, so maybe CBT, which is more focused, so that's cognitive behavioral therapy. So basically the way I break it down for children is that that how you feel affects how you think, and how you think affects how you behave, right? So if I'm feeling sad about something, it's going to affect my thoughts, and then those thoughts are going to drive my behavior. So if I'm able to or maybe I think I said it the wrong way, how you think, rather, how you feel first. How you think affects your emotions, then how your emotions affect your behaviors, right? So I always tell them this, I said, okay, if I'm walking on the road and there's a broken sidewalk and I fall down, and in my head, I'm like, oh, the city was out to get me. They broke that sidewalk deliberate. They knew I was going to go for a walk that day, and they broke the sidewalk and made me fall down. Then I'm going to get angry at the city. I'm like, this is a conspiracy against me. And then I'm going to write a long letter to the mayor about how they broke the sidewalk and it was their fault for me falling down, right? But that if you're able to look at, and so that distorts your thinking. So, and then you're not making rational behavior, like rational decisions. And so CBT is one of the most, I would say, very popular treatment modality, because it's trying to, so you are the one doing the work. It's a lot of work. You have to do the work yourself, because your counselor cannot do that work for you, right? Yeah, so you have to do the work. And right now we're also doing a lot of, I like solution focused, which is focused on, so it's, instead of being focused on the problem, it's focused on the solution. Like, okay, so you have this problem, so how do we deal with it, right? So it's a short term, it's more like a short term kind of counseling. And I also like DBT, which is dialectical behavioral therapy, which is that so it talks, there's a lot of one of the things I like, we talk about radical acceptance, where there are things that you cannot change, so you have to accept it, right? So, and then once you know that you have to accept it, so it's like if you're born with a particular condition, that's how you're born. You can't change it. So, but how do you cope with it? right? So now you're looking at how do I cope with it? We'll talk, another one will be mindfulness. So mindfulness is focusing on the moment, trying to, one of the favorite things I teach kids, so it's called the 5 4 3 2 1. So in that way, like, oh, what are the 5 things you see? 5 things you can, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, because so what it's doing is grounding you, right? In that moment, especially if you're prone to anxiety attacks, like you're spinning, right? So it's what it's doing is grounding you. So that's one of the, I love mindfulness. Even in terms of like keeping the other thing, we know narrative therapy, in terms of talking, in terms of keeping journals, right? Writing things out. For some people, they find it really helpful to keep a journal. So I like gratitude journals. I'm like, okay, every day I want you to write something you're grateful for. Something. It doesn't have to be a big deal. It's like, oh, I'm going to Disney World, or like I'm going, like, it's going to be like, today I had it could be a donut. It was the yummiest, loveliest donut. I woke up in the morning, there was hot water. Like, that's a big deal. Even in the winter, so your siblings haven't used all the water, like you got hot water too. Like, it could, so finding something to be grateful for every day, it really does work, because what it does is that it shifts your mind, so you're not focused on the negative, it's shifting to look at the positive, right? So and then like, even with some kids who have some sensory issues, I love coming up with like calm down kits. So the little bags where you can put things in there for them to play with. It could be a fidget toy, a stress ball, it could be silly strings, it could be different things, right? So the one thing I love about kids is that they will tell you something is not working. They're pretty honest about things. They're like, no, this isn't working. Like, and then, okay, we'll try something else. Right. So I always say it's not about your agenda as a therapist, is about what meeting your clients where they are. What do they need? It's not about you coming like, okay, I got this file, this is what I think, and this is my prescription. No, it's about listening to that client and saying, okay, what do you need? Right? If it's meditation, I love guided imagery personally, because it allows me, I'm a very visual person, and that helps my writing, because I see things, I see the scenes before I write them. So I love guided imagery, and so that's another thing that I do with kids. We do guided imagery. I love doing meditation, little clips on YouTube. We go and watch Headspace, is one of my favorite like call it now, programs, or so we do a lot of mental health apps. So we encourage the use of mental apps, especially for the teens. They can do that on their own. And so there's so much, right? There's so much. It's understanding. And I always say, the way I look at it when I talk to some of the younger ones is, I always say, having an imaginary toolbox in your head. So you have this imaginary toolbox. I always say mine is purple. It has polka dots and it has glitter all over it and shiny. An imaginary toolbox in my head. That's where I keep all my coping strategies. And sometimes you have to try. Some days you try one coping strategy. I'm taking deep breaths. It's not working. I'm counting 1 to 10. It's not working. Maybe I try to, listen to music and dance. It's not working. Maybe I need to go for a walk. So it's giving yourself, getting to understand yourself and understanding what calms you, right? One of the other things we talk about is calming through your 5 senses. I like that too. So I would say your senses are the way you take in information around you, right? So I'm like, okay, so how do you calm to your 5 senses? So if you're calming to the sense of sight, you're like, what do you watch? That would be, so I like watching funny videos on YouTube. I like, like you watch that. Or what would be, so if you're calming to your sense of smell, for some kids, like some people do candles. I'm very careful about that with kids on fire. So of course, if their parents are watching that, right? Or we do essential oils. Or if you have a particular sense that you love so you can get like a shower gel So lavender, oh, I love lavender. So if you're doing lavender, you do coconut. Like even in terms of kids who struggle with sleeping, if you do lavender pillows, like the pillow spray, it's
Yeah.
really been helpful. So in terms of what sense, because it evokes just that sense of calmness. If it's this the sense of hearing, what are you listening to? Some people, like at night, they can say, okay, the meditation tapes, or even listen to waves crashing. I love the sound of rain on like a tin roof, because it reminds me of Nigeria. So just that sound of just the sound of the rain, of raindrops on the tin roof, or so it's where you listen to different things things that just calm you. Sense of touch. Some people have I have a stress ball, you have a favorite blankie or a favorite teddy, so something you can touch. I have a fuzzy blanket I like. So yeah, so it's also normalizing for children that even adults can do this. There's nothing wrong with an adult having a stress ball. Nothing wrong with an adult having things that they like to smell. There's nothing wrong, so it's what would be the last one is sense of taste. Hot chocolate in the winter months, hot chocolate is yummy, right? I like tea. So I tell the kids, I say, hey, I drink tea and it calms me. And so what do you like? Some kids like mint. So it's figure out. So even some kids who have ADHD, when they chew gum, they can focus better, right? So it's yes, you can't have all these modalities, but then you have to figure out what works for that particular child, and helping them understand that what works today may not work tomorrow, and that's fine, because as you're growing, your needs are also changing, right? So it's on the so for it's I think looking at it, mental health is like your physical health, that you don't only pay attention to it when you're not feeling well. So it's thinking of yourself as something that is growing. So as you water a plant, you give it food. So just like you. So to keep your physical health, you're meant to eat right, you're meant to exercise, you're meant to sleep well. You have to do all these things, right? To make sure, and if you're not feeling well, you go to a doctor. It's the same thing as your mental health. You have to sleep right. You have to do all those things and all those emotions. It's okay to get angry. It's okay to be sad. It's okay. Like right now, there's so much going on. It is depressing. If you turn on the news, you will find something to cry about.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the truth.
Yeah.
So you live in a world, you don't control so many things. The only thing you can control is you and what you take in. So if you know, this news is depressing me, don't watch it.
Oh, yeah.
Limit your intake. If you feel so, you have it's to normalize, like as your mental health is important, as your physical health is important, your mental health is important. So what are you doing every day? I always ask my kids, every day, do one thing for your mental health.
Yeah.
One thing, right? As whether it's today, I'm going for going for a walk, I'm doing some gardening, I'm doing some painting, I'm singing, whatever it is that makes you just glow, do it. Talk to a friend, visit your grandma, right? Whatever it is, find one thing. So it's like you're investing in yourself. There's this book. I'm trying to feel I can't remember the exact title, but it talks about filling your bucket. So it's about bucket dippers and bucket fillers. So bucket dippers are people who like kind of take from your bucket. They're the ones who drain you, right? So it could be people, it could be things, right? And then the bucket fillers are the people who, those people who just come and they just so light into your life, or things that just make you happy. So every day, think about it like life happens. Stress is part of life. And as life happens, it's kind of dipping from your bucket. It's banging things, and taking things out. So it is your personal responsibility to yourself to fill your bucket. If you are blessed to have people in your life who are bucket fillers, who help you, fantastic. But if you don't have those people, it is still your responsibility to yourself to fill your own bucket, whether you're a child or an adult. right? So taking that personal responsibility, like, okay, that you it's to make yourself well, because sometimes other people may want to fill your bucket, but maybe they can't. Maybe their own buckets are so depleted they don't even have enough energy to go fill somebody else's bucket, right? So it's up to you to know, right? One, what do I need in my bucket? Two, what level is my bucket? How am I feeling today? I love written questions. Like, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, I love that. Okay, so on a scale of 1 to 10, last time I saw you, you were at this number. One meaning, I never use zero because I'm always hopeful that, there's something, right? So one meaning like you were just not feeling good, and 10 meaning we are fantastic. I said very rare you find people who are 10 all the time, right? The episode when you're 10, but to be 10 all the time, I haven't met somebody. So they might be out there, I don't know, but I haven't met them yet, right? So I do a lot of rating questions like, okay, how are you today? So on a scale of 1 to 10. So last time I saw you, you were 4. Okay. So where do you want to be? Like if it's a short-term, if we're doing short-term counseling, because I also do that as well. I see kids where I have to do 3 sessions within 6 weeks. So it's a very brief model. So we're trying to move from 4. So what to you will be a fantastic number? They might be like, okay, I think I want to be an 8. Okay. So right now we're 4. So the goal is how do we move from 4 to 8? And that's the goal. Okay, so what are things that would move you? And if let's say you moved backwards, what happened? Right? So that's a quick way of also even language in the home with parents, right? Quick checking with your child, like, hey, what number are you today? And they have that conversation, right? Like, oh, last time you and I spoke, you told me you were an 8, but now you're telling me a 4. What happened? All right. It could be something situational. It could be something that just happened that day. They had a crappy day, which is fine, right? Or it could be something major, right? So I think that's an easy, quick, it's very concrete that you can measure, like you were this number, now you're this number, right? So that's a concrete way to do a check-in. And even with yourself, right? Like, okay, what number am I today? I'm this number. Okay, what's going on with you? And also knowing your baseline, because some people they're 8s, that's their regular, because they're the happy people, they're just chirpy, that's them. For some people, 5 is a good number. We hear 5 and we think, oh, that's average, but that's their baseline, right? So we should be worried if somebody who is a 5 is maybe now a 3 or 2, because that's going down, right? And somebody who's an 8, if they're going to 5, right? You might think, well, that's the average, but for them, that's a big drop, right? So it's having a baseline for yourself and even for your kids, so that way you can help them. Because sometimes for some kids, having something concrete rather than saying, tell me how you're feeling, because they may not be able to articulate how they're feeling. But if they tell you, oh, I was a 5 or 8, I'm a 5, then you know there's something, and then you're able to tease that out with them. So I hope that all that was helpful.
That is amazing. And a lot of what you said goes into talking about understanding yourself as well and becoming self-aware. This thing that you're talking about in terms of knowing your baseline and knowing how you operate and how you function is so important, to then noticing the changes in your own mood, the changes in your energy levels, seeing whether or not the things that used to give you joy, whether or not they give you any more joy. And you also said something about how going into your toolbox for the things that you need or that you use to cope, and how sometimes one thing might not work, but you don't have to beat yourself up about it. And I think that is so important, because sometimes we go to the thing that we think, okay, this normally helps me, or you bring out your CBT workbook and you're like, okay, I'm going to go back into my CBT and try and see if I can, try to get to a good baseline, and it's not working. And it's really important to understand that, you're on a journey. Yeah. And you're evolving as well. Yeah. So, and so the tools as well will start to evolve. And we do that with physical things that we see around. The phone that we used several years ago becomes redundant a couple of years later. And as we evolve as well, so do those tools in that toolbox. But this has been so amazing. And so many nuggets of wisdom in here. Thank you so much for coming on the episode. And just to round up, if you were to give our listeners something sort of like a bite-sized nugget for them to remember about breaking the culture of silence around mental health relating to children, what would you say?
Bite-size.
It doesn't have to be bite-sized.
I know it wasn't about bite-size.
I just them to remember, about breaking the culture of silence, because I think that's so important.
There are very few things grow in darkness. Like even when it comes to like when you think of plants, right? Very few things go in darkness. We all need light, right? And that and any way that we can bring light to ourselves and to other people is very important. And I think seeking help, it's a way of shining light, right? So no, silence doesn't help. It just covers things up and they don't go away. It just festers. And festers, and then by the time you're finally ready to deal with it, it's so big that you're not even sure where to start from. But when you address issues when they're smaller, they're easier for you to manage. So early intervention, whether in whatever, I'm a big fan of that, whatever early intervention, because you have a better chance of success at it. So few things go in darkness. So seek light, open it up. Are there going to be, she's going to shake things up? Yes. But ultimately, I think it's important. We only do this life once. That's it. It's just once. So do it well, as much as you can within your power.
Yeah. Oh, that is amazing. Thank you so much, Yejide, for coming on today's episode. And where can our listeners find you online?
Okay, so online, on Instagram as Yejide Kilanko, on Facebook as Yejide Kilanko author, on Twitter as Yejide Kilanko. I think that's it. So I'm quite active on social media actually, because something I can do from the safety. I'm a homebody, so I can be home and do that, right? So so if anyone if you have questions, I would be more than happy to answer them. So if you have any questions related to mental health, getting help, or please reach out. I think it's important that we all take care of ourselves in this very, very challenging times. These are very difficult times. So it's even more important that we take care of our mental health, because we're in for a long run. And it's a worldwide thing. So please don't feel that you have to be alone. The mental health services all over, wherever you are, reach out, ask for help. Please don't feel that you have to do this alone. We weren't created to do life alone. I don't think so.
Yeah, thank you so much. And so listeners, as I said at the beginning, I'm going to be giving away 2 copies of Daughters Who Walk This Path. It will be open to listeners in Nigeria, Canada, the United States, the United Kingdom. So all you have to do is, when this goes up, leave a post on a comment under the post with Yejide's face on it on my Instagram as to why you've enjoyed this episode. And make sure you're following Yejide and myself at A Slice of Health on Instagram, and the book would be yours. It will be a random draw of two listeners. So thank you so much, everyone, for listening to this episode. Thank you so much, Yejide, for coming on.
My pleasure. Thank you so much. I got to talk about things I love to talk about. So hey, it was pleasurable for me. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad.
Thank you for joining us on today's episode. Do share this podcast with 2 people who have not heard about us before. Remember that this podcast in no way replaces advice from your own doctor or physician. Do subscribe and follow us on social media. Leave us a review on iTunes so that others can access the amazing content. And do join the club at asliceofhealth.club and drop us some suggestions or questions that you might have. Don't forget to be a health champion wherever you go by separating health fact from health fiction.